Ladies and gentlemen, how are you doing out there? Welcome to episode 7 of Talkin Track, South Florida's newest racing show. I'll probably keep saying newest show until we get to episode 10, so bear with me for the next 3 episodes. But I'm your host, Armany DePaul, the voice of FMU Athletics and writer for the Daily Downforce. Today we got a jam-packed episode for you guys today, as we always do. We're going to be talking about the Austrian Grand Prix, more specifically Max Verstappen versus Lando Norris. And then we will also go over the Ally 400 at Nashville, more specifically the finish. And of course, we'll give you our race weekend roundup. And with all that further ado, let's dive right on in with our podium perspective. And that is going to be, as you see on the bottom of your screen, Max Verstappen versus Lando Norris. And I'm going to put a little bit of a disclaimer. This is going to come out like very much of a rant. Now, I watch all motorsports. I always say if it's got 4 wheels, I'm probably going to end up watching it. And if the opportunity presents itself, drive it. But for the majority of my racing, I guess it's not really a career yet, but majority of the time I've watched racing in my life, I have been a NASCAR guy. NASCAR is what's gotten me into racing. NASCAR is my favorite motorsport, and it will continue to be my favorite motorsport unless something drastically changes. So I do want to give that perspective before I go into, let's just call this a rant, when delving into Max Verstappen versus Lando Norris at the Austrian Grand Prix. I do want to put that out there. It's a little bit of a disclaimer, but that's not a bad thing. So let's dive right in. Stereotypes that people have of rich people. What do I mean by this? The stereotypes of rich people is they're all popped up and pampered. In some cases, they're drinking their tea with their pinky up. And, you know, it's kind of just everything is pitch perfect. Nothing can be wrong. If something is even slightly off the edge, everyone goes ballistic. Like that stereotype of rich people, if that makes any sense. F1 is that stereotype for rich people in the in the realm of motorsports. And to be fair, folks, their motto is they're the pinnacle of motorsport, which, by the way, is not true by any way, shape, or form. There really is no pinnacle of motorsport. Now, yes, it might be the hardest motorsport to get into because there's only 20 seats, but it is not the pinnacle. It is not, once you get to F1, there's nothing better. I mean, obviously, I'm mostly a NASCAR guy, and I think NASCAR blows F1 out the water 100 times out of 100. But why I say this about F1, and again, you can't really blame them. It's kind of like that thing where you stereotype with NASCAR, where it's just a bunch of rednecks driving around in circles, failer. It's kind of like that with Formula One, where, I mean, folks, you got Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, Aston Martin, before Alfa Romeo, and coming in soon, you're going to have Audi. All luxury brands, or close to luxury brands. Chevrolet and GM trying to get into Formula One. They're not trying to get in with the Chevrolet bow tie. They're trying to get in with the Cadillac brand, because that's a luxury brand and that fits the F1 mold. They're not trying to bring a Chevrolet or a Corvette model, engine-wise, sticker to the F1 grid. Now, yes, you have Ford coming in, but that's more in collaboration with Red Bull powertrains and not specifically Ford. I mean, even I believe the engine tag goes as Ford/Red Bull powertrains. But they have that stereotype, and I think that was in full display as well with all the nonsense going on at the Austrian Grand Prix. To me, that incident let's start off with the incident between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. I've seen the replay a bunch of times at this point. I mean, how can't you? F1 is promoting it like crazy. YouTubers are doing their reactions to it like crazy. Yes, it is Max's fault because he did squeeze Lando all the way up the track. But at the same time, Lando's trying to hold his ground, as he should, saying, if you're going to do this to me, we're going to wreck. And credit to Lando for doing so. But if Lando is seeing that Max Verstappen is racing aggressive, if he's weaving in the braking zone, if he's doing everything in his power to prevent Lando from getting by him, why is Lando trying to make a dive bomb over 6/10 behind Verstappen when it's already shown 2 times, I believe even 3 times before then when he tried, it wasn't going to work. You know the saying, insanity is just doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result? That was Lando Norris. Can't tell me Lando didn't know this, because he dimed in the corner to where he could just go high, and then he's just going to cut down the middle and get a better run off the exit. I'm pretty sure that's what he was trying to do. But at the same time, if Max is weaving around the braking zone, why are you taking that, in my opinion, is an unnecessary risk? And listen, I'm not a race car driver, so I typically don't like, especially people who really haven't driven that level of racing, I'm not a big fan of when people try to act like, oh, they should have done this, they should have done that, driving in the race car. When in reality, there's a reason they're in the race car and we are not in the race car. Let me just put it that way. So I really don't like to talk as if I know better than the drivers, because if I did, I'd be getting paid millions of dollars to do so, and not these guys. But at the same time, it's common sense. If you know Max is weaving around like crazy, if you know that he's doing dangerous tactics, why do you continue to do an even more, in my opinion, a more reckless move by trying to go from 6/10 to all the way? It hasn't worked before. What makes you think it's going to work now? But where do I want to go with all this? I'm kind of getting a little bit sidetracked here. What I want to go with this is the idea of how Max is being reckless, Max is being dangerous, he should get a penalty, he should get this, he should get that. This is why he's one of the worst drivers on the grid. And you see my reaction from my face, because what I'm about to say really pissed me off when I heard this. When Lando Norris came out and said Max Verstappen has a 70-point lead in the championship, therefore, because he has a near 3 races gap to the second place, which at the time and still is Lando, that Max should just cut him a break. And there's a lot of people who seem to agree with that. There is a reason why, especially here in the United States, we see F1 drivers as soft, except for Max Verstappen. He's anything but a soft race car driver. I'm going to tell you that right now. And Max Verstappen came out as such. It doesn't matter if you're 70 points ahead in the championship, if you're 2 points ahead of the championship, if you clinch the championship at Austria with like 2, 3, 4 months left in the season. What have I mentioned in previous episodes? You drive each race, you celebrate each race if you win like it's your last, because you never know when you're going to win another race again. How many of you out there, and truly be honest, expected Lewis Hamilton, widely considered one of the greatest, not the greatest F1 driver of all time, to have yet to win a race in this new regulation period that started 2 years ago? And don't give me the excuse that Mercedes has not been good. George Russell just won his 2nd race with this Mercedes. If he could do it, why can't Lewis? But I'm not knocking on Lewis. I'm just trying to explain to you and try to show all of you that even a driver with over 100 wins, 7 championships, over 100 poles, is struggling to win a race in the last few years. That is how hard it is to just compete and win in racing. I mean, folks, this isn't a stick and ball sport where 9 times out of 10, it's 2 teams one-on-one. And if you're a guy riding the bench, you could still win the Super Bowl. Kadarius Toney's a 2-time Super Bowl champion, for crying out loud. You don't get that luxury in racing, because it's you as an individual against 20, 30, even 40 other individuals looking for the same thing you're getting. That is why it's so difficult, just because the probability of winning a race is way lower. It's not a 50-50. It's more like a 10% chance you probably can win the race. That's why drivers who have a 20, 30% win percentage are considered legends in any form of racing. You win a 30-year races, you're one of the greatest of all time. You do that in any other sport, you're considered a bum or a scrub. But that's because racing is such a different animal. And I'm trying to piece that together. So I, in a way, don't fault Max Verstappen for doing so, for driving as aggressive as he is, for doing what he needs to, because he's doing what he needs to do to win. He doesn't care how many wins he has. He doesn't care how ahead he is in the championship. He's just looking for another trophy. And that is what a true racer is. They don't care their situation. They don't care what advantage or disadvantage they have. They just go out and they do whatever they can to win. And it annoys me even more when other drivers come out basically trying to say, race me easier. Or one of my pet peeves with drivers in racing, again, I'm not in the seat. I'm not going to claim I am a better driver than the drivers in the seat. It really frustrates me, folks. When drivers come out basically asking or complaining that they are being raced hard. Like, if you're more worried about not being raced hard, good luck even making it through a race on iRacing. That's like if Patrick Mahomes, during the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay, where he was getting sacked every 3 plays, he started complaining the defense, like, they need to stop sacking me, like, I'm being sacked too much. But saying that it's the defense's fault, not his offensive line's fault. When Alexander Albon made that quote back in 2020, I immediately knew he was going to be out of the sport because he wasn't mentally ready. If you're not mentally ready as a driver, or really just in life, like, let's compare this to life as well. You're being raced really hard in racing because you got to work for the win. They're just not going to hand it to you. Just like in life, people are going to hand things to you. You got to work hard for everything that you got. If you expect people just to hand things to you, guess what? You're not going to make it anywhere. Same thing with drivers. If you just expect a driver, because they're in a better situation than you are, just pull over for you just because, oh, woe is me. Folks, if Lando continues this mentality, wouldn't be surprised if he only stays at 1 win in his career. Now, he's going to get more wins. He's way too talented not to. But the fact of the matter is, the people who are going out saying that what Max did was inexcusable, what Max did was diabolical, that he should have been suspended or whatever. Now, again, it was Max's fault. I understand F1 cars are not NASCAR cars where you can beat and bang left and right, you could spin a guy out and virtually nothing happened. These are completely different styles of cars, and they do require a little more wiggle room in terms of, hey, you can't just punt a guy. I understand that. But to basically go after a driver who's trying to, win a race, who's trying to do everything in his power to add another trophy to his trophy room, because again, these are not easy to come by. What do you think Lewis Hamilton would do right now just to get another win in F1? You saw how he celebrated last year when he had a pole. A pole! What do you think he'd do if he was in a position to win a race? I guarantee you, he will be a lot more aggressive now than he was in years past. But do you see what I'm saying here, folks? F1 drivers, when a driver does something aggressive, they try to find every excuse as to why that's unacceptable. Meanwhile, you got other sports like IndyCar, NASCAR, sports car, dirt cars, where that's the norm. Yes, it could go over the line. When we talk about the Ally 400, I'll get to that. But again, they understand. It is hard to win these races. I've said that multiple times already. These things are not easy to win. So we need to put that into perspective. Even Max said, I don't care how hard, I don't care how ahead of I am in the championship. I'm going out to race to win because it's my job. My job is not to pull over for you and let you by. My job is to take the lead, win races, and win championships. I don't think it's in Max's job description that he has to pull over and let the guy who's second by just because he has a 70-point lead in the championship. Or maybe it is. Someone show me his contract. So when F1 fans come out and they say this, and yet I see the comments of, so you're telling me that Max is just doing hard racing? I understand. NASCAR and F1 are different. I understand that there are things you can't do in F1 that you could get away with in NASCAR. And yes, some of the things Max did, especially at the end, when they both basically punctured their tires, it was on Max's fault. It was pretty egregious. If you're just driving someone off the track, that's one thing. You can't do that in any sport. That's just really, dude. But at the same time, this whole, oh, he's moving in the braking zone, it's dangerous. What about Lando dive bombing from over half a second back? That's not dangerous? Come on, folks. There's a reason, again, there's a reason why us in America, most of us see F1 as soft. Because anytime something remotely happens with the driver being aggressive, trying to really fight for their position, they get criticized for it. That's why we'd say we would love to see some of these drivers try NASCAR, or see some of these fans watch NASCAR, IndyCar, sports cars, or sprint cars. They would lose their minds. But guess what, folks? Like, the motorsport world doesn't revolve around F1. F1 is just a part of the overall motorsport landscape. That's there, and they're probably one of the only motorsports where they get criticized for driving aggressive. There's a reason, again, why F1 is considered like the rich people of motorsports. Not because not just from the other factors I mentioned earlier, but from the fact of how they act. A lot of the drivers, they don't like the aggressive racing when they're race aggressive. They don't like when the fans boo them. They don't like when things don't go their way, even in their own team. That is one of the reasons why all these little things that pile up is why I don't think F1 will ever grow to be the #1 motorsport in America. Because the very nature of Formula One is, in a way, against the very nature of America. Even in NASCAR, you got a guy like Joey Logano, who, his path to the sport was easier than others, and people hated him for it. Meanwhile, you got a guy like Ross Chastain, who's just as aggressive as Max Verstappen, but because he was a simple watermelon farmer, people love that. You don't have those stories in F1, and you never will, just because of the nature of the sport. But let me close out with this: was Max versus Lando over the line? At the end, yes. For the rest of it, I don't think so. I loved it. Max is trying to defend his position. Lando's trying to go for everything he's got. There's nothing wrong with that. It's two racers at the top of their game going for a win, when it could very well be their last win. You don't know what the future has in store for any of us. They don't know either. Those are two drivers throwing everything, putting all the chips on the table just for a win. And that's how racing should be, no matter what series. I don't want to see drivers moving over, letting people by for position or a win. I want to see them work for it. I want them to show me why they are in their seat on merit. I want them to show why they're one of the best drivers in the world. I don't want people moving by. I want people to be aggressive. I want people to earn their wins. When drivers, fans, they complain about it, what are we doing here, folks? If you can't handle hard racing, maybe you should be on the couch with the rest of us and I'm in the driver's seat. All right, I'm about to sound like a hypocrite or a contrarian or whatever term you want to use, because now we got to talk about the Ally 400 in Nashville. So, you guys know how I said that I want drivers to be aggressive and earn every spot and fight for every spot that they can hold or gain? There is a line to that, however, and now we're about to get to the NASCAR side. Oh boy. So, as you guys know, I'm a writer for the Daily Downforce, and I had the privilege of writing the race recap for the Ally 400 at Nashville. I probably should have renamed it to the race recap for the Ally 450 or whatever, 430 or whatever mile it is at Nashville, because we had, I think, extra 30 laps of overtime. The race distance went on in over more than 10% of the original distance. This is going to be another rant. This is going to be another rant. So let's start off with this. I do like it when drivers are aggressive. That's what I want. You can go back to the previous segment, talk where you hear me going on about that for almost 18 minutes. But there is a fine line where it gets from being aggressive to just looking like a circus. And that overtime at Nashville was a circus. I get it. Drivers are running out of fuel. Unless you're Joey Logano. You probably could have gone the whole race distance with fuel in that point. I get it. It's not an easy track to drive on. But at the same time, if you are 40 of the greatest stock car drivers that this country and world have to offer, and you can make it 2 laps, we need to try to make it 2 laps 5 different times. That to me is a joke. That is an absolute joke. I get it. People are being aggressive. I get it. People are running out of fuel. I get it. 2 tires, 4 tires, no tires, different strategies all over the field. I get it. But again, 40 of the greatest stock car drivers in the world should be able to make it 2 laps. Just about a minute or less around the track. Meanwhile, you got drivers who are brake checking or spinning each other out under yellow or crashing on the back straightaway. Like, folks, if you are 25th, what makes you think you're going to go from 25th to the top 10? What are you doing? The battle for the lead was fairly calm. You got Joey Logano or Brad or Denny Hamlin or Ross Chastain or Kyle, okay, maybe not Kyle Larson in terms of being calm, but the front of the field, it was all status quo. The back of the field, where everyone's wrecking each other left and right. They look like clowns. Imagine you're trying to convince someone who just thinks NASCAR is a bunch of, again, the stereotype dumb rednecks driving around a circle. You're trying to convince them that these drivers are professional athletes and they are the best of the best. Well, when they have to go through 5 laps, 5 overtimes because they can't make it half a lap without wrecking, what do you think they're going to say? I told you. It's ridiculous, folks. And thankfully, the majority of the industry agrees that that was a joke. Say what you want about, unlimited overtimes, no overtimes, respect the race distance, which, to be fair, I'm one of those people. If it's 300 laps, advertise it, just say it 300 laps. If we're going to do an overtime, do only 1 overtime, and that's it. We don't want multiple overtimes in any other sport. Or maybe besides basketball, but that's it. Then, even then, they'll just cut it. But I think soccer might have them. But either way, we very rarely have just unlimited overtimes in certain sports. I guess baseball is it too. Okay, I'm getting sidetracked. Maybe other sports do have unlimited overtimes. But either way, to me, the discussion shouldn't be, does NASCAR have too many overtimes? To me, the discussion should be, why can't these drivers handle 2 laps? 2 laps. Again, it takes drivers around anywhere from 25, I believe anywhere from 23 to 33 seconds, somewhere around that ballpark to get around 1 lap in Nashville. So we're talking anywhere from less than to just a little over 1 minute. We can't do that. Again, I don't want to claim that that I can do this better. I'm not saying that I probably couldn't even make it 1 lap in a cup car. I'll be lucky to get off pit road. But at the same time, these are the greatest drivers that this country has to offer. At least that's how they're advertised. If that is how they're advertised, I am going to have the expectation that they are going to prove that on the racetrack. And that includes at the end when it's overtime. Because I really don't like it. I'm going on another tangent here. I really don't like it when people are like, oh, it's the final lap. We're going to overtime. Everything's thrown out the window. Because that's when we start to look like a circus. I said that F1 looks like just the soft rich kid to other motorsports in America. Well, in some cases, NASCAR could start looking like just the out of control kid here. Because when it's overtime, everyone is perceived or is advertised as they're going to wreck each other. This is for all the marbles. I don't care who you are. I'm going to wreck you. You're all getting wrecked. And we're basically going to do the melon mirror, the Hail Melon, all around the track to win. That really bothers me. You know why? Because you're basically saying that these drivers are not professionals. You were telling me that these drivers will not take care of each other. You were telling me that these drivers will end up being just as efficient as a driver as the terrible BMW driver who recklessly drives without his blinker on I-95. You know who you are, by the way. You're telling me that's what these drivers devolve to. That's what you're telling me. These drivers devolve when it's high stake pressures and it's supposed to be accepted. It's like when Michael McDowell wrecked Ryan Blaney at New Hampshire last week. But people are like, he's going for the marbles. He's got to do what he's got to do to win. And yes, you do. You have to be aggressive. You have to put drivers in uncomfortable situations. But if you know it's not going to work and you have a 99% chance of wrecking and you're just preying on that 1%, that's not being aggressive, folks. That's being stupid. And then when it doesn't happen, we just accept it. We're like, they just got to do what they got to do, rather than, what are you thinking? You knew it wasn't going to work. So why are you doing it? If you know it is not going to work unless a miracle happens. We don't perceive things on life based on miracles. We pray for them. I pray for them all the time. But I don't go about my life as I'm going to go about my life thinking a miracle is going to happen. I'm not living my life like I got $1 million hoping for a miracle that I'm going to get $1 million. So why are some of these drivers driving like they're going to get the miracle that they desire when it's more than likely not going to happen? Again, I'm not a driver. For all you drivers out there, if you guys watch this, please educate me, because I would love to know. I would love to know just the mindset of what these drivers think when this happens, when there is odds that are so unlikely to happen in their favor, and yet they still go for it. I'd like to know, because at least to me, it's like, what are you thinking? It doesn't make you look like one of the greatest drivers in the world. It makes you look stupid. And I'm not calling anyone stupid. I'm just saying that's how it looks. And that's how it looked at the end of the Ally 400. when you have all these drivers just jostling for position, really just not giving each other any breathing room, and we get 5 overtimes in the process. We say we love overtime, but I guarantee you a lot of those fans at the end, they were thinking, it's finally done. Finally, these guys made it 2 laps. Congratulations. 40 of the greatest stock car drivers in the world finally made it 2 laps. I know I've been ranting a lot in this episode, but that's because, again, I care about the sport. Go back to episode 1, you can really, and you'll really get that deep dive. But at the same time, there is a fine line between being aggressive and just being absolutely ridiculous. The end of the Ally 400 was absolutely ridiculous. Again, you got drivers, when you can't make it 2 laps, not even 2 laps, just 1 lap, get to the white flag and then the race is over. You can't do that. That just it makes us look like a circus. It makes the sport look like a circus. So there's rant number 2, talking about the end of the Ally 400 at Nashville. Overall, I thought the race was fantastic. I'll go more into that on the race weekend roundup coming up very shortly, but overall, man, just, I promise the rants are over. No more rants. Got them out of the way. Got them out of my system. Now we're just going to go straight into our race weekend roundup, where I'm going to go over each of the big races. I'm going to rank them at the end. First, I'm going to give my thoughts and then give my rankings as to which one I thought was the best, which one I thought was the worst, and if it applies the middle, third, fourth, etc., etc. So, we'll start off here. I mean, it's going to be kind of a short one this time around. We really just got only 2. We got the Austrian Grand Prix and the Ally 400. I don't really like to count the lower series like the Xfinity and the Truck Series. However, there might be situations in the future where I might just say screw it and implement those series as well, because they are nationalized televised series after all. So it's probably only fair to do so. But without any further ado, let's dive into it. This edition of the Race Weekend Roundup. And we'll start off here with the Austrian Grand Prix. Overall, I thought the race was I thought it was great. Yeah, Max pulled away at the beginning. It looked like no one was going to catch him. However, he started running into issues. Lando Norris, that McLaren really finally started to pop up. You had great battles in between around 3rd to 5th to 6th as well. Russell and Leclerc and Sainz and even Hamilton getting into the mix. It was very fun to watch for that final podium spot, which turned up to end up being in position for the win, as George Russell, of course, you all know if you guys have seen it, Max and Lando, they take each other out. George Russell sneaks by, and then he goes on to win the race. So overall, I thought the race was very good. About a 7 out of 10, because again, the end, how that Lando and Max, I didn't really go through this too much in the podium perspective, but how Max handled the end of that incident where he started pushing Lando onto the grass, to me, that was unacceptable. That was unacceptable to do that in any way, shape, or form. He should have got parked for that, in my opinion, because at that point, you're putting a driver in danger. That's putting a driver in danger, and in my opinion, that should have got him parked from the race, not a 5th place finish. But overall, I thought it was a good race. Again, incidents like that do taint it for me, but the product itself, when people were losing their minds, I thought was very good. And you get a new winner there in George Russell. Who thought Mercedes would win a race at the beginning of the year? None of us did. But they kind of have this trend. They start off the season pretty slow, and then as the season goes on, they understand their car, they get a lot better. Hopefully by 2025, they can fix that issue, and they can just jump right out of the gate and go fast. So that's my thoughts on the Austrian Grand Prix, quick thoughts. And now we'll move on to my quick thoughts of the Ally 400 at Nashville. I thought the racing overall was very good. I'm probably more of a fan of Nashville Superspeedway than most people are. I've always had this thought. If you're going to put the finale, if you want to put in a big market, if you want to put it in a NASCAR-owned track, if you want to put it in an area of the country that has a NASCAR feel to it, I'm a South Florida guy. I live 30-40 minutes away from Homestead Miami Speedway. But South Florida is not NASCAR. South Florida is more F1 and sports cars than it is NASCAR. In my opinion, I think the finale should be a Nashville Superspeedway. Great track, unique track. I don't think we've ever had the finale at a concrete track before. And on top of that, a lot of drivers are good here. Your Toyotas, your Chevrolets, even a lot of Fords are good at this track. Ford just won here. And it's in a big Nashville market where NASCAR already has the banquet. So it wouldn't even take long. You go from, hey, Jump straight from the finale, just drive an hour downtown, and you're at the banquet. That's simple. You know, yeah, it's not Charlotte, it's not Homestead, it's not Phoenix, but some renovations to Nashville Super Speedway, I think it'd be the best venue for a finale, me personally. The racing, I thought was good. Yes, Christopher Bell dominated, but Denny Hamlin, it looked like he had a car that could match his speed. It looked like Kyle Larson, if things went the right way, maybe he could be in the mix. And even when Bell wrecked out, he had Ross Chastain versus Denny Hamlin. That battle to the end was fantastic. And that final lap where Reddick was really driving down Logano, I thought that was great because Reddick just came out of nowhere and you're like, whoa, is Zane Smith about to win this thing? Where did Reddick come from? Can Joey hang on? I thought the finish was fantastic. The overtimes were a joke, and that's going to diminish my score, as it should, going off my same criteria of the Austrian Grand Prix. Had we not had the foolishness of those 4 or 5 overtimes, I would have probably given it an 8 out of 10, but because of that, I am going to slightly dock it to a 7 out of 10. Really, I feel like the Austrian Grand Prix and the Ally 400, similar. Had very much of the same story. Kind of slow in the beginning, picked up as the race went on. It got really a lot overboard in the end to the middle of the end, and then the end was fantastic. I thought those races were pretty equal. However, if you had to ask me, I'm going to give the slight edge to the Ally 400 in my rankings because you knew Russell was probably going to win the race unless Sainz just kicked into another gear. He was probably going to win. Or was it Piastri? I don't even remember who was second. At the end of that final lap, you didn't know if it was going to be Logano, Reddick, or Zane Smith. That unknown of who's going to win the race, that extra anticipation, that extra excitement, that it just is enough to just slightly boost the Ally 400 in my race weekend roundup. So, coming in at number 1 is the Ally 400 at Nashville, and coming in at number 2, rounding out the caboose, the 2024 Austrian Grand Prix. That's going to do it for this episode, folks. Again, episode 7 here of Talkin Track. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, I am recording this on the Tuesday after this race weekend. It probably won't be uploaded, in maybe the next few weeks, but just to give you guys a little bit of a timetable. If you guys want to follow us on our social medias, follow us on Talkin Track Show on both X and Instagram. Got a lot of great content there. Follow us on Remix Sports Media as well, both on X and Instagram. That's going to do it from us here, folks. We're going to wave the checkered flag now. This was Talkin Track here on Remix Sports Media.